Phil Robertson is Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch in Bangkok. Phil Robertson, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Why did this particular ceasefire collapse? Why has this conflict proved so intractable?
Well, there's in Kachin state a lot of resources, mineral resources, timber, other economic resources that we believe are also fueling this conflict. But there's also a very significant blood feud going on, really, between the Burma Army and the Kachin Independence Army, or the KIA, where the KIA certainly bloodied the government's army very badly in the early days of the war, and I think that this has been driving this forward as well.
And is that why, even though under pressure from the Burmese parliament, the government did announce a unilateral ceasefire a couple of weeks ago, is that why it's not being adhered to?
Well, the actual ceasefire was so fleeting that it was almost it was too quick to pass. It was hard to even see it. It was declared on one day and broken the next day by the government. The problem is that the army appears to be driving the policy in Kachin state. And despite claims by the president, who should be in charge, that there's going to be no offensive operations by the army, that the Tatmadaw will only respond if they are attacked, the Burma army has been pursuing an offensive and is raising very, very serious concerns, because as they're driving now towards Lhasa, the capital of the Kachin, there are tens of thousands of internally displaced persons who will be at risk. We're very concerned that the government of Burma and its army have been involved in war crimes against the Kachin, have been indiscriminately attacking civilians in the past, have been using sexual attacks on women in the past. We've documented this in the past year, and we are calling right now for the offensive to stop and for human rights of the internally displaced persons to be respected.
We'll come to those allegations in a moment, but if it is the case that the authority of the president and his ability to control the military are limited, what then is the way out of this conflict?
Well, this is where the international community really needs to step in more forcefully to persuade the government of Burma to try to respect the laws of war, but also to find a way forward to mediate this process. We're hoping that the various different donors and others who have been supporting Burma and its reform process can step up, but also we hope that the government of China, on whose border all this is occurring, will play a role as well in ensuring that both sides get back to the negotiating table and that the rights of civilians in this area are respected.
Are you suggesting then that some members of the international community were too quick to endorse the liberalisation that has occurred under Thein Sein's leadership in Burma in the past couple of years?
Well, we commend them for recognizing that there is a reform afoot and for responding. The problem has been the undue haste with which international sanctions were taken off of Burma, which essentially eliminated the leverage that the international community had to try to promote rights-respecting behavior, not only by the Burma government, but also by the army. The army in Burma, as the main institution, the strongest institution in that country, has done very, very little in terms of reforming itself. It is essentially a live-off-the-land army which views civilians as pawns on a battlefield, who, forced to flee, will then burden the insurgent army that the Burma army is fighting against.
Is there any evidence that the government of Thein Sein would like international involvement to help bring about an effective ceasefire and also to facilitate negotiations with the Kachin?
Well, sadly, the answer to that question is no. In fact, when the U.S. Embassy in Burma recently raised concerns about the situation in Kachin state, both the President's office and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs essentially told them to butt out. So far there's been no indication from the government or the army that they welcome any sort of mediation by the international community. We should say also, though, that the KIA, the army of the Kachin, has been very hard line in opposing a movement towards a ceasefire. Right now, they've also been involved in a number of cases in serious crimes, for instance, using child soldiers or indiscriminate laying of landmines. And so we think that there has to be also more analysis, more focus on what the Kachin are doing, because certainly their hands are not clean in all of this as well.
Returning to that question of human rights violations, what evidence is there that the army is violating the laws of war, as your organisation, Human Rights Watch, insists? What evidence do you have?
Well, we have had researchers in the field documenting these violations. This included attacks on civilians, systematic destruction of property, sexual abuse against women and girls, use of child soldiers, use of landmines. This has been documented through interviews with internally displaced persons, both in China and in parts of Kachin state. So we've heard it directly from the people whose rights were violated and then confirmed it through various different other sources. It's also been something that the UN and various different governments have been following and saying that, in fact, these things are occurring.
And why do you think it is that the government is resisting offers of international assistance to mediate the conflict and also refusing to allow international aid organisations to provide humanitarian assistance?
Well, what they've said about humanitarian assistance is that they think that if the UN goes in, that the assistance will go to the Kachin Independence Army, which there's no indication that that would be the case. And, you know, we're dealing with UN agencies that have a tremendous amount of experience worldwide in dealing with situations of conflict and professionally providing assistance to civilians. So that has been the excuse they've raised there. Our concern really right now is that the government is and its army is going to go through to the administrative capital of the Kachin in Liza, which is right on the border of Burma and China, and take that capital. That essentially they're not going to back off. They're not going to heed the advice of the international community, but they're going to go forward. And we may see, you know, as many as 20, 30, 40,000 internally displaced persons and residents of that town forced to flee either into other parts of Kachin state or across the border into China, which of course will set off a refugee crisis for China as well. So, you know, this is a rapidly moving situation, one that could get potentially much worse in a very short period of time. And so the window is short for the international community to act and to redouble their efforts to try to encourage restraint by both sides.
Phil Robertson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.